The following podcast is scheduled for 1 hour. Introducing your host, sitting in the podcast booth, podcasting out of Southern Maine, with a mic on the boom and a hot take to dish out. Weighing in with the knowledge and passion of a lifelong wrestling fan, he is the reigning, defending, undisputed host of the New England WrestleCast. Give it up for Nate!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of the New England WrestleCast. I am your host, Nate, and I am going to be bringing you this show every week to talk about indie wrestling all around New England and beyond, and I'll have a special guest with me every week. And this week, we have none other than wrestling's favorite Hoosier, Big Country Jason Maverick. Jason, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, Nate, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know, I had today off, so I go back to work tomorrow after a 4-day weekend. So I'm feeling pretty good.
Nice, nice. Yeah, lovely little holiday. Give everyone that's fortunate enough to have the day off. It definitely helped with prepping for episode 1 of a new podcast. It was a happy accident to schedule it on a holiday.
Nice.
Thank you, sir, for coming on and for being the inaugural guest of this new show. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, anytime, really.
Anytime. We've had the honor of meeting a few times. I've gotten to photograph you a few times. So
I'm honestly surprised your camera didn't break, bro.
Dude, as many times as I've been bumped into, I'm surprised my camera didn't break. But it is not the most OSHA safe environment to take photos.
That's very true.
So for anybody listening who is maybe unfamiliar with you or any of the promotions that you regularly wrestle for, why don't you give us a brief introduction of yourself and we'll go from there.
My name is Big Country Jason Maverick. I come to you from Corden, Indiana, weighing in at 325 pounds. I'm usually on a normal basis wrestling for Let's Wrestle. I've just currently started working for Atlantic Pro Wrestling. I've worked for Crown of Maine. I've worked for the NAWA. I've worked for MEW. I've worked for MPW. I've made a few appearances in NCW, but right now things are starting to take off. You'll be seeing me in Let's Wrestle and APW and hopefully NCW soon. Later this month, actually on the 21st, I also debut for Proving Ground, so you can see me there as well.
Very nice. Yeah, so definitely some big promotions in there. Most notably, most familiar to me, Let's Wrestle being the offshoot of Limitless Wrestling. So that's definitely going on the right path. Those other promotions, admittedly, I'm not familiar with a lot of them. Are those Maine? Are those New Hampshire, Massachusetts? Like, where are those based around?
So Maine, you have Let's Wrestle, the NAWA, who's ran by Larry Huntley. You have Crown of Maine, which is way up north, almost pretty much on the Canadian border. MPW is ran by Neil Day, I think is his name. Yeah, Neil Day the second, I think is his name. And then MEW was run by Mike Turner. He only usually runs maybe a few times a month, maybe 4 or 5 times a month. So, you know, it's not a consistency there, but
Sure.
It's still, you know, throughout the year.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot. There's way more, especially getting into it, being really into the industry in the past 12 or so months with being a ringside photographer. I was blown away when I found out how much indie wrestling was even just in Maine, let alone New England. Being a Portland guy, Limitless is obviously right in my backyard. And then as I get to know more of you guys, getting to know Larry Huntley, I'm like, man, there's like 3 or 4 different shows every weekend all over the state. And it's been great to be able to meet so many of you guys that, maybe don't go to Limitless or don't get south more often. A lot of you guys wrestle more northern a little bit more often. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting with just how much of it's up there. And it's still wrestling. It's still very much the same industry, but it's different how the take is a little bit different, going from a show a little bit up north and maybe in like a gym or something like that versus like something down here. It's I feel like it's approached a little bit differently. Like there's a rawness to the stuff that's further north that really brings out some passion that I really enjoy.
Yeah. Obviously, in Maine, Limitless Wrestling is the place to be. That's a place I hope to be at some point. But besides that, everybody, everybody all over the state also wants to be on Let's Wrestle, and and I feel with Let's Wrestle, you have to be on your game every day because everybody's vying for that spot. Everybody wants to climb the ladder in Maine. Limitless is obviously the top goal, but right below that you have Let's Wrestle. So everybody in Maine's climbing and they're scratching and they're fighting for their spot. Uh, Really, that's just how it is in any organization, really.
Oh, of course. Yeah, in any industry. I mean, even, whether it's wrestling, photography, anything where there's a competitive edge to it, whether it's competing one on one in direct competition or just your product versus somebody else's product. Hell, even in podcasting, like there's so many out there, and it's all about being the one that stands out. So we'll work with that for a second, talking about you making your way into Let's Wrestle and bringing up a little bit of like the journey and what that goal might be, where a local goal and then maybe a regional goal and someday maybe even a national or global goal.
Hmm.
What does that look like from the perspective of the athlete? Because from the outside, we see it as, okay, this particular wrestler is performing in front of 30 people at a state fair. And then
Mm-hmm.
maybe a couple of years later, you're like, all right, well, now they're mid card in front of 170 people. And
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody can kind of see that, like, that's obviously moving up in the world of wrestling,
Yeah.
so to speak, right? Not to ever talk down on anybody because everyone's going to start somewhere, but that is that elevational gain. What does that look like, and how do you approach that coming into it and going, okay, this is where I have to start? Like, what are things you focus on and strengths to make that progress and to go that direction, and elevate yourself to the level you want to be at?
A lot of it has to do with just showing up. You're not going to get onto a show unless you show up and you help out for the majority of the people. Um, I started I started training in some rundown barn, and then once that got shut down, I started training at the Limitless Dojo. And this is right whenever this was. I started in October of 2020, so that was like right there in the middle of COVID. So it was kind of a mess there at first, but once the first Let's Rumble hit, I think it was the first Let's Wrestle show once the pandemic came back, and Randy Carver told me that, hey, I have a spot for you in the Rumble if you'd like it. And like, that feeling you get whenever like you get something that you don't expect, or like you feel like you haven't earned it, like the pit feeling in your stomach.
Yeah, it's there's a term, like imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So when I got the message from Randy about being an entrant in the Let's Rumble on the first show back from COVID, I had that feeling because a part of me felt like that I wasn't good enough, and a part of me felt like I hadn't earned it. And I've been that way my entire life. So like everybody else can tell me they can be like, hey, you did really good tonight. I see the improvement, or whatever they may say, good or bad. But mostly good is whenever I feel like, okay, well, I don't see it that way. I don't feel like I've done enough to be where I am, or I just don't deserve it. So whenever I made my Let's Wrestle debut in the Rumble, you know, I felt like I didn't belong. But then once my music hit to go out there and make my debut in the Rumble, everything just like fell off my shoulders, like all the stress and all the worry and all the concern and all the thoughts. It just kind of vanished once that music hit. So really, it's just about putting in the work. You know, sometimes you're not gonna feel like you deserve it. Sometimes you're gonna feel like things aren't going the way you want, or things aren't going the how you want them as quickly as you want them to. But just give it time, continue putting in the work, and eventually you're gonna get pushed into the right direction, and eventually you're gonna get to where you want to go.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and it's effort and it's advice that could be given, as you said, for really any industry, any profession. You put that work in. With professional wrestling, it's obviously a lot. It's an emotional toll. It's a physical toll. It takes a lot of time. You see people all the time as a fan, you see people, and I'm sure being in the industry as an athlete of the industry, you see people who they go in and they have these big dreams and these big ideas, and then they take their first bump or they do like their first workout and it's not anything that they thought it was,
Right.
and they're gone in a month or two. And it really is an industry that I think people outside of it don't respect enough, and
Hmm.
they don't realize, like, if you're not giving 100% every day, you're not going to make it.
You're not, and it sometimes sometimes like whenever I first started at the dojo, I feel like some of the problem is with when new people come into their training schools and you have people that have been there for a little while, and you get that thought of like, oh, I don't fit in, or oh, I'm not going to be able to hang with these guys. I feel like that's some of the thought that goes through these kids' minds when they come into the dojo, and then they're only there for, like you said, maybe a class or two or a month or two, and they just quit. You know, when I started at the dojo, I felt like it was, but eventually, the more I showed up, the more I did the drills, the bumps, which it hurt. Obviously my mind got used to being there, my body got used to bumping around and stuff, and I just felt like at some point, I started to fit in with others. I think, yeah, that's a lot of everybody's problem is they don't feel like they can do it, and they just have to get the chance.
Right. You have to get through. I mean, it's like anything else that is physically intensive. Obviously, I don't think there are many things as physically intensive as pro wrestling, but whether it's running, going to the gym, anything that's some form of physical activity, you have to kind of get over that hump, and people need to give
Yeah.
themselves a chance. So going back into thinking about when you got started, and like, let's even go like a little bit before the early career, but even before the career, like, at what point did you look at wrestling and say to yourself, this is something that I want to do. This is something that I want to dedicate at least a portion of my life to, and see where I can take it.
Honestly, I had started training in like May of 2018 in that rundown barn. But once my dad passed away, that's when it's like, okay, you know, a fellow wrestler told me, he's like, hey, you need to make your dad proud. He didn't tell me that I had to wrestle, but he told me that I needed to make my dad proud. And that's when I went from the rundown barn in the middle of nowhere to the Limitless Wrestling Dojo. Um, you know, I've always had this. I didn't have a lot of time with my dad. My dad moved to Maine from Indiana in 2006, and I didn't see him from 2007 all the way up until 2018. So there was an 11-year gap. So when he passed away in 2020, that's when all the gears started clicking. And it's like, okay, I didn't know my dad very much. I've heard stories from my grandparents that, things didn't go smoothly with everything when it came to custody and all that stuff, I guess. But once he passed away, it's like I want to make him proud. And I was talking to that fellow wrestler, and he's like, "Well, make your dad proud." And once I started getting on a Let's Wrestle show, I felt like I was starting to succeed with that because I know my dad was a referee for Let's Wrestle as well as Limitless, everywhere around here. But like knowing that Let's Wrestle and Limitless were the two biggest companies in Maine, I felt that once I got on that Let's Wrestle show, that's whenever I started. And I still don't feel like I have. I've done a lot, but in my mind, it's like I haven't done it. So once my dad passed, so that's whenever I started to dedicate myself to wrestling.
Kind of when it kicked it into the next gear, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
So that being said, going from the barn to the dojo, going around to all these promotions, starting to make an impact into Let's Wrestle, which, as you said, is a really big deal for you.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing all that together, what moment in this, so 2018 to 20, so we're looking at, 6 years, what moment in the last 6 years would you say stands out to you the most in okay, this is something I can do, this is something I can do well, and I could catapult off this to take me somewhere? Like, what moment was that defining moment for you that maybe sticks out in your head?
So that moment came from a match earlier this year. I believe it was in May. I wrestled Brett Goslin for the Let's Wrestle Championship match, and that match, like I'd always wanted me and Brett because me and Brett have been close when it came to certain things. Like we don't talk every day or anything, but like when it came to giving me advice or whatever, whether it be mental advice or wrestling advice or whatever, Brett was one of the top guys that I'd go to. So having that match, in my opinion, right next to me versus Rip Bison from about a month and a half ago would probably be the moment that, you know, I felt that I could do it because beforehand I wasn't really confident. And then I had that match with Brett. Something in my head clicked, and I'm not exactly sure what caused it or what it is exactly. But since that match, I felt more confident in myself and what I've been able to do in the ring.
As somebody who's been able to see him perform, uh, most recently at a Limitless show, he is also another incredible in-ring talent. So I can definitely understand why having a match with him and being able to shine in front of a bunch of fans with him is definitely something that stood out to you in that way. So going from that current kind of defining moment for you, which was fairly recent, I hate to be that stereotypical, like in the next, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? But if you could give yourself a realistic goal in the next, say, 2 to 3, like, where would you like to see this, this current opportunity with Let's Wrestle and everything else? Like, what would you like to see that blossom into for Jason Maverick?
Um, there's a few promotions in New Hampshire that I'd love to debut for. Chaotic being one, Fight Life being another. I'm not sure if Beyond is located in New England or even Blitzkrieg. I'm not exactly sure, but those are a few promotions that I'd love to get into. I'd also love to travel outside of New England. So like I'd love to travel the entire country of America. Actually, I actually had the pleasure of wrestling in front of some of my friends and family from back home in Indiana a few years ago. That was cool, but like I want to be able to travel. Like even if it doesn't, happen, just wrestling over all over New England is fine for me. But my goal within the next few years to get out of New England and wrestle wherever I am.
Do you feel like, because with particular personas, particular characters, when you're very regional based, and
Mm-hmm.
you start to spread out, sometimes people need to adapt, need to change. Like the scene is very different no matter where you go. We saw that in the last few years the last several years really with Main State Posse, and they were flannel and buoys, and they were very much like the state of Maine. And they found
and then they went to the vibe and all that. And I think there was another catchphrase. I can't remember what it was, but that started popping because
right.
If I remember correctly, once they stopped doing the whole flannel thing, like they were then going to like Canada.
Oh yeah.
Like,
well, that's kind of where I was getting with that, was like being flanneled in Maine and lobster traps and buoys. Like it's kind of like what the comedian Bob Marley had with comedy. Like when your niche is very localized, it's hard to break out of that. And do you think that Jason Maverick, as he is a person that will be able to flourish and find success in different regions? Do you think that that's something that you might have to address down the road? Is it just, this is who I am, take it or leave it?
Really, I think it's something that's going to have to be addressed down the road, because when it comes to creativity, I'm not one for creativity. Like basic stuff I can do, but like outside the box type creativity, I'm absolutely clueless. So it's something that's I'm going to have to address once I get to that point. But right now, I'm always trying to adapt my character or improve my character or whatever. But right now, I'm Jason Maverick now. In a few years, we'll see where I'm at.
That makes sense. All right, we will turn it over to the live audience. I do want to remind people, I know this is episode 1, so a lot of you maybe you're obviously tuning in for the first time, but maybe you're just stumbling across this. New England WrestleCast at gmail.com to always submit questions or comments for any upcoming guests. And then we are live, and the live people have been chatting away. We have... blind. Nikki Aria 84 says, glad to see you get to where you are from the days of training in a garage to now, and that you always show up with your gear in your bag.
Yes, ma'am. That's the number one rule.
Like, always be ready to get in the ring.
Yeah, always.
It's an opportunity that you don't want to miss. I'm assuming something like that is like, if somebody is injured, if somebody no-shows, if they need something else, it's like, hey, who's here? Who's got gear? Who's ready to go? Who is showing that initiative?
Yep.
So, and it's always, and Eliza says, yeah, always be ready. Also threw out a comment about the match with Brett, with Dang, and a bunch of exclamation points. So apparently they really liked that match as well.
I'm good. I hope everybody that sees this can go back. You can find that match on YouTube, actually. So, if you're seeing this video and you're intrigued by that match or what I said about that match, go give it a watch. And don't forget to give Limitless Wrestling's YouTube page a follow.
Of course, Limitless, Let's Wrestle, all. And do they have a separate page for Let's Wrestle, or is it all on the Limitless page?
I think it's all on the Limitless page.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm never gonna scoff about giving Randy a shout out. Randy is one of the best people I've ever met. But yeah, check out his Jason stuff over that he's done at Let's Wrestle over at Limitless Wrestling on YouTube, and definitely take an opportunity to catch him live. As I said at the top of the interview, have had the chance to photograph him and meet him. Incredibly fun guy to photograph. I just got to photograph you. Was it 2 weeks ago at your EWA debut? Was that 2 weeks ago? 3 weeks ago?
I want to say 3.
Yeah. Maybe it was 3.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It all blends together.
It really does. It throws me off whenever I have a weekend where I don't have shows, because then in my mind, I'm thinking, I know I have a show this weekend, and then I go and look at my calendar and there's nothing there.
Yeah. That's what I was like. I'm looking and I'm like, no, I was like, did I not put something in my calendar? What's going on? But
right.
no, It's nice to have a breather. We do have a question. Frog Splash 450 wants to know who would be your number one ridiculous tag team partner.
Like in main wrestling or anywhere?
um, let's give both. Let's give local, and then let's give like beyond local.
So you said the most ridiculous tag team partner.
The number one most ridiculous tag team partner.
If we're gonna go main wrestling, I'm gonna have to go with the tag team of Jason Maverick and Roadblock.
Okay, what makes that ridiculous?
Because I'm 6'4", and then you have Roadblock, who's like 5'4" maybe. So it's like a whole foot taller than he is. And if you look at Roadblock, he's got the long like biker beard. It kind of makes it. It's a throwback or whatever else, younger. But do you remember the Dora the Explorer show?
Unfortunately,
do you remember the troll who lived under the bridge?
No, I'm old enough to where I had kids that watched it. So
okay, so if you go on like YouTube or whatever, I'm sure you can find it. But there's this grumpy old troll who lives under the bridge, and every time I see Roadblock, that's who he reminds me of.
I'm sure, like, it sounds funny to me, and I'm sure other people will get that reference. So for local, Jason Maverick and Roadblock, you promoters, you guys heard it. Book that tag team. What about for national? Like, if you could pick anybody, who do you think would be just the funniest? Like, you walk through the curtain and everyone's like, "Why?"
I'm not even sure that. Listen, I, I don't even know if this could ever happen. But picture Jason Maverick teaming up in a trios tag match with MSP.
That would be pretty wacky.
I mean, I'd love to do it, but obviously Aiden Agro's an asshole. Well,
if we could get MSP in the vibe phase,
yes,
I think that with like full blown out of the curtain redneck Jason Maverick, I think that would.
Listen, can you imagine the pop for that?
I think people would love it because it's something that it would almost break some stigma and stereotype. You know what I mean? It would be coming out and be like, yeah, we're gonna group up, and this is gonna be a blast. And I think the combination of Agro's skills and DK's skills and your skills, I think it's all three of you have such a different move set that I think it would be very complimentary in the ring.
Picture this, okay? So you have MSP make their entrance. They come out through the curtain. Follow My Big Country. The Angel Kid puts on them sunglasses that he wears. He just like totally too cools it. Like he totally like just puts on the glasses and everything. And I just like click into that whole vibe type thing. You know what I'm saying?
So you're saying you'd be like the Rikishi of the group.
I mean, why not? That'd be kind of dope, actually.
That would be a lot of fun. You guys dancing in the ring. That'd be great. Chat's lighting up now. We've got Dragon's Bane 69. Nice. Saying we're all proud to see where you were and where you have gone. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Although I'm not sure. I'm not usually sure who these people are with their little like
the
fancy name tags and stuff. So thank you to whoever commented that.
If you guys know Jason and want him to know who you are, just type up who you are. It's funny, being a gamer, I'm almost the opposite. Like when I see someone's real name, I'm like, who the hell's that? And then they'll be like, oh, this is Toothbrush. And I'm like, okay, I know who Toothbrush is.
Right. Yeah. It's weird.
Dragon's Bane 69 says Trash Panda Holler.
Well, that don't tell me anything either.
Nikki says that she's known you since you moved here, so pretty excited to see where you go next. So, and then
Okay.
Frog Splash has Jason Maverick and Hornswoggle.
That'd be kind of fun too, honestly.
You just pick them up and throw them at people.
Right? Like I'll just like put him in position that I do for people when they get hit with the hay bale and just start swinging them around, hitting people with it.
Right? It would be a good time. He's very entertaining. I love watching him come around locally. It's always a good time when he's around.
I think he was just up here a couple months ago.
Yeah, I think it was the show that I missed because I was sick, and I won't, especially now that I'm backstage. Like I won't go to a wrestling show sick. I ain't gonna risk it. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I think it was him and Channing Thomas for the belt.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Nick, it's Nikki area. I don't know how to say the username, but it says it's me, Kia, Holy Water Jason.
Oh, okay. I know who that is.
And then Eliza wants to know if Roadblock constitutes as a little person. I don't know Roadblock, so I don't know. Maybe next to Jason he does.
Height wise, yeah, I'd give him.
Well, I appreciate everyone hanging out. That's awesome listener feedback from the first episode. If you are listening to the podcast feed, we are live every Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, twitch.tv/New England WrestleCast. So now we will transition over to what is going on or what has gone on this past weekend in New England. I've got two big highlights for you. There are two promotions out of Massachusetts that both had massive main events this past weekend. I had the pleasure of being at one of them, which was Chaotic Wrestling's Iron for Gold. And the main event of that match was a much anticipated, long-awaited event for the Chaotic Wrestling New England Wrestling Championship, which was vacated by Shannon Levangie several months ago due to an unfortunate injury, which we are going to be having her on this show in the near future. I'm excited to talk to her and see how things have been since that injury. But alas, as much as Shannon was deserving of that belt, they needed a champion. So they've had several different matches and qualifier matches, and it all came down to the main event this past Thursday night in Malden, Massachusetts. And it was the Fatal 4-Way 30-minute Iron Man match between Milo Mira, Aaron Rourke, TJ Crawford, and Trigger the OG. Jason, have you had the pleasure of either being in the ring with any of them or meeting any of them?
I have. I wrestled with Trigger the OG in a Fatal 4-Way match a few years ago. I've met Aaron Rourke. He's a very nice dude. I have not been able to step in the ring with him yet. TJ Crawford, I've met him. I haven't been in the ring with him. I'd love to be in the ring with TJ Crawford. Who did you say the first competitor was? I don't mean to sound disrespectful or anything.
No, he also recently, so it's Milo Mira. He used to go by Brother Steven. He's the miraculous Milo Mira. I don't think he makes.
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that name.
He's been on.
And again, I don't mean to sound disrespectful if you're listening.
No, I mean it's New England's a big area. I think he's been to Let's Wrestle once, and he'll have to correct me on that. But he's most of the time I see him, he's at Chaotic. He's been at EWA a couple times. Amazing in-ring performer. So yeah, 30-minute Fatal 4-Way. It was absolutely brutal. And speaking of Milo, he just put a video up on TikTok, and I believe Chaotic shared it as well. The craziest, okay, you'll have to educate me a little bit here because I've heard it called a couple of different things. And I'm going to use Orton as an example because I think it's the most, when he does his like spinning power slam, like, is there a technical name for that? Like when they're running at him and he just it's just spinning power slam.
Yeah, just pretty much.
Okay.
Spinning power slam. Yeah.
So he did that, but Aaron Rourke was standing on the apron outside the ropes, and Milo was leaning between the top and middle rope, and Rourke ran at him and did a spinning power slam on the edge of the ring. Like on the ring apron. Yeah,
Wow. I'm
it
gonna
was
have to check that out.
it was brutal. I was fortunate enough to be like 5 feet away from it and photographing it, so I cannot wait to see those
Wow.
photos. But I try when I'm photographing and I'm at ringside, I try not to be too emotional. I don't chant,
Yep.
I don't cheer, I'm not favoring anybody because I'm crew, I'm there, I'm part of the presentation. I want to let the fans do what the fans do, and I need to do that. Every
Yep.
once in a while there's something that brings out that fan, and I can't help but react. And that was one of those where I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. You said Chaotic shared it too?
Yeah, Chaotic put it up on Instagram Reels, and Milo shared it on his TikTok. I'm sure it's a bunch of other places. That's where I've seen it so far.
All right, let me check this out real quick
But
because
it is a
it's got me uh
go ahead
quite
and take a
intrigued.
look. Yeah, you need to see it, man. It's ridiculous. And anyone who knows anything about wrestling knows that the outside of that ring is the hardest spot to hit. It is not forgiving in any way. Shawn Michaels suffered one of his back injuries because he went up over the top rope and his lower
Yep.
back hit the side of the ring.
Mhm.
And that's a solid steel bar. There's nothing forgiving about that. So receive a spinning power slam, uh, I did not get a chance to chat with Aaron afterwards, and hopefully he is okay. But that was just a moment in that 30-minute match. All the wrestlers got several falls, and it was really tight right up to the end. And as anyone who watched it knows, Trigger OG won the New England Chaotic Wrestling Championship. He has a very long tenure with local indie wrestling and with Chaotic as well, and that was his first ever singles title.
Wow.
He's held tag titles. He's got a laundry list of accomplishments. He's been part of the unit. He's done so many things, but he never was. The singles gold always escaped him. And this past Thursday, he got his first singles championship. It was presented to him directly by Chase Del Monte. It was a very emotional moment, and moments like that are moments that I feel really privileged and really honored to get to be that intimately close to it to photograph.
Mhm.
When you can just see the emotion um, on the wrestler's face. So I believe the VOD is up for that. If not, it'll be up really soon. So make sure you guys go check that out. They always put on a great show, and the entire card, top to bottom. I wanted to highlight the main event, but you had. Uh, Now I'm gonna mind blank. I should have wrote this stuff down. Richard Holiday went against. What? Yeah. See, I should have written this shit down. Episode 1, right? Landon Hale, the good doctor. But that match was interrupted by Mortar. Anyone that follows Chaotic knows that Mortar and Richard Holiday have been at each other's throats for the past several months, and they had a little bit of a brawl before they got taken out of the ring. We had Ricky Smokes versus Jose Zamora. Jose Zamora is an up and comer for Chaotic Wrestling, who had a massive upset over Brad Cashew the event prior. So he is on a rise. The entire event, Chaotic Wrestling Iron for Gold. Make sure you guys check it out. And then we'll jump over a little bit to the same night, different promotion, same state, also in Massachusetts. We had Beyond Wrestling's Wrestle Open, which happens every Thursday night. And the main event of that was an open door war where Ryan Clancy earned a title shot after a 19-minute battle. But it was highlighted by a post-match attack by Bryce Donovan, setting up something going forward. Bryce clearly not happy with Ryan Clancy. You had mentioned Beyond, and Beyond
Mhm.
is not a promotion I've had the opportunity to see live yet, just because it seems to be whenever they have a show going, I'm working a different show.
Yeah.
Um, but I hear so many good things about it. And I feel like when it comes to, we talked about Limitless and how Limitless is, you know, they're kind of the big dog in the state of Maine,
Yeah.
and there's so many other promotions that are worth mentioning that are amazing in their own way. Adam Booker's recently revived Eastern Wrestling Alliance of Maine, Larry Huntley's NAWA. You mentioned a few other promos at the top, but again, wrestling is always about climbing that ladder. And I
Mm-hmm.
think right now for the state of Maine, the top of that ladder is Limitless. And
Yep,
then
of
when you
course.
get to, again, you go to Massachusetts and other areas, Chaotic and Beyond are always kind of right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are two names that really uh, have cemented themselves as New England and Massachusetts wrestling. Um, is there anybody that's regularly at Beyond that is maybe somebody that you would like to be face to face with in the ring someday? That's maybe they don't make their way up here, but they're more in the Massachusetts area. Anyone that kind of stands out to you?
There's two, and they wrestled each other at the Coliseum at the most recent Limitless show, and that is Alec Price and Dijak. Um, I've watched Alec Price grow in the company to where he was feuding with CJ Cruz and Let's Wrestle before the pandemic. I've seen him grow all the way up till winning the Limitless Championship, and I've seen him to where he's doing today, where he seems to be all over the place. Whether that be Limitless, Beyond. I think he's on GCW too. I mean, it's crazy. I think I've also seen him in MLW. It's crazy to where would watch people grow. Like you're excited to see where they go, and Alec Price is one of those people. For Dijak, for me, um, I know he had some matches with Keith Lee on the independent scene, but his match from NXT Takeover Oregon, that match with Keith Lee really got me into Dijak. So seeing Dijak back on the indie scene and seeing him in places like Beyond and Blitzkrieg, even Limitless, that itch to have a match with Dijak is there too.
It was great to meet him when he came back. I was not part of the indie scene when he was on it prior to his televised professional wrestling career. So that was definitely a cool thing to be able to meet and photograph him. I really have to parrot what you're saying with Alec Price as well. Getting to watch him come up through, and my only experience with that was through Limitless, and watching him go from like that little punk that everybody loved to hate, and
Mm-hmm.
and then just really developing that character and that persona and taking it all the way to the Limitless Wrestling Championship.
Yeah.
He and it's one of those things, and maybe this stereotype isn't as prevalent in today's wrestling scene, specifically indie, but he is not a big dude. And
He is not. But I've noticed over the past year, he's really put on a lot of muscle.
yeah, he is definitely he's bulked up more. I didn't want to say bulked up because that's a weird phrase to use for Alec Price, but he's definitely put on a lot of muscle, and he's showing the difference that makes in the ring.
Yeah.
He's able to do so much more uh, with just the strength and the finesse that he has. And when you
Mhm.
put the endurance and the strength on somebody who is a little bit smaller like that, they can utilize it in so many ways. And no, it's been great to watch him go. He was my pick and my hope for the VLC. This past month, I was really hoping that he was going to come out on top and get his title shot, but it didn't happen.
Maybe next year.
Maybe next year. I think the man that won it was very well deserved. Desmond Cole has put his heart and soul into Limitless. He is definitely one of the house favorites. And
I mean, his charisma. And like his size and athleticism, like he had a match with Too Cold Scorpio within the past year, and I can't remember what show it was on, but he had a match with Too Cold Scorpio, and I think that was the point where I'm like, I'm behind this guy.
Right.
And then everything since then, him feuding with JT Dunn.
Oh my God,
that's a big thing.
yes.
That's a big thing in a limitless ring because JT Dunn's been around since the beginning, I believe.
He has. I mean, that's a big thing in New England. Like JT Dunn's
Yeah.
name carries a lot of weight. But it's Bufa's another one of those people that brings it all to the table. He's got the charisma, the energy, the excitement that really gets the kids excited, and everyone likes shouting along and dancing. And he's got the in ring.
Go ahead. Sorry.
He's got the in ring talent that gets all the wrestling fans going. Okay, I want to watch this guy.
I think it was the first time. So Bufa does he does the circle around the ring, and then he does the thing on the ropes where they chant Bufa.
Yes.
So the first time that he ever brought a kid up onto the ring apron to do that in Yarmouth, I'm standing there, beside Randy and sound and everything, and I'm thinking to myself, are those kids supposed to be up there? Was like I didn't know. And then after after Bufa and the kid did the thing on the ropes, the kid went back, sat back down. I'm like, okay, well, he must have like picked her out of the crowd to come do it or whatever. There was another time though, I don't think he realized that there was a kid that was going to do it with him, and like he just did a circle around the ring and just kept going, and some girl just got up and followed him and got up on the ring apron and did it with him. And he kind of looked back at her. He's like, wait a minute, and then he just like, screw it, let's go with it.
Right. He is such a genuine dude, and that fun, bright, energetic that you get in the ring, that's him. Like that's what you get backstage too. And it's excuse me. And when you can have that parallel between the athlete that's in the ring and I'm trying to figure out how I want to word kind of personal traits about you yourself. And when those can meld and mesh together, it makes that person that's in the ring so much more genuine. And I think that he really nails that. We will take it back to the live chat room a little bit some more. We've got Dragonbane69 says, how about the first Mexican in Maine person? No, Mexican in Maine, Who's the first? Is that like a... I'm guessing that's a hint as to who they are. Who was the first Mexican in Maine that you knew? And keep in mind, that's the second hint. The first hint was Trash Panda Holler.
I'm curious if that's my buddy Mark from work.
Do you know a Mexican garbage man?
I do. He's actually one of the drivers at my work.
Oh, is that Mark?
I'm going to assume that's probably Mark.
Dragon's Bane 69. Are you Mark? Playing some little mini game on the podcast here. Bingo! It's Mark.
Nice.
We have sussed it out. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, Mark. Let's see. Frog Splash saying, can't wait to see my photos from the event. Always fire. Appreciate that. Thank you. Eliza Cat says, Lollipop Guild. We've got Ricky Smokes is so good at being utterly unhinged. Yes, he is. We've got We Stan EWA Maine. The shows get better every time. Definitely do. I can always agree. We've got Agree Limitless is on top. So many people have been called up further due to it. Definitely. Limitless has put a lot of people into EWA or into AEW, into WWE, TNA. I mean, you've got everything that Carmelo Hayes is doing. You've got MJF. You've got Chris Statlander. Like, there's so many people that
Daniel Garcia,
who Limitless was definitely a launch pad for them. And the fact that can come out of Maine is really cool. Because Maine doesn't get noticed for a lot of things. Let's see. Limitless has a great reputation. Another shout out for Big Boofa. Another shout out for JT Dunn. Joey Nails wants to know if Jason Maverick will shout out his favorite little buddy.
Joey Nails. Who is he talking about himself?
I'm guessing so.
Joey Nails, if you're talking about yourself, I hope you step on a Lego.
Ooh.
Listen, the little Joey Nails, he's the nicest kid in the world. But sometimes he has that face you just want to punch.
If that's who I think it is, I think we're friends on Facebook. Does he wear one of those driver caps? Is that who I'm thinking that is?
Well, yeah, like the 1920s Englishman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who that is. Let's see. Juggalo Miller. Oh, I know who that is. He says, my photos are always fire. Thank you, sir. He'll be coming on here soon. And then, yeah, that's about it. Well, we are... Why do I suddenly sound echoey? I hope that's not coming through on the recording. Episode 1 problems. We are approaching the 1 hour mark, so we are going to skip the deep dive this week because, episode 1. So we're still working out kinks. But I want to give a big shout out to Jason Maverick. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. What are your upcoming events that our listeners can find you at so people can catch you in action?
So this upcoming Saturday in Franklin, Maine, I will be wrestling for MEW. Next weekend, the 14th of September, I will be down in Derry, New Hampshire, wrestling in the Space Town tournament for the Shepherd's Cup for Atlantic Pro. The 21st, I will be making my Proving Ground debut. And that might be all I've got for the
month. All right. And I will, after the recording, I will go over those dates with you again. I'll make sure those dates are in the show notes with links to tickets, so anybody that wants to go check out Jason in action can do so. I was also asked about when my next show is. I don't know if you mean the next podcast or the next show I'm photographing. So the next podcast is going to be episode 2, and we are going to have as guests the Monarchy. We've got BMT and Powerhouse Ariel, the king and queen of New England, will be joining me on episode 2. I'm very excited for that. Again, you can catch it live on Twitch, twitch.tv/New England WrestleCast, or you can find it wherever podcasts are found. I don't want to name, because you get all the fanboys that are like, fuck Apple and fuck Android. No, just find it wherever you find it. I don't care. Rate and review, please. If you enjoyed this show, it is the first episode. I had a great time. Jason, you were a great guest. If you liked this show, please leave a review and please leave a comment. Give it 5 stars. It helps it, especially with a new show. It helps it get up on the list of new discovery stuff. So would be greatly appreciated. There will be more ways coming in the future that you can help and support the show. My first concern was getting content out to you guys, so that is what I did. As far as the next shows I'm going to photograph, I can look at my calendar really quick. I will be photographing. I've got Chaotic Wrestling, September 13th. I will be at BTW Wrestling on September 20th. Yes, and then Limitless Wrestling on September 21st. Those are the next 3 shows that I will be photographing at. Nope, no Nate for Geno's. You know why. We don't have to say it on a podcast.
Another one, September 13th at Geno's. I forgot all about that.
Well, there we go. Mr.
Larry.
Lights Out Lee Miller helped you out.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you to him, I guess.
Yeah, so I will be I'll be at those shows doing photos. We have a podcast coming up Monday, and I do want to give one quick shout out before we close it for the night. If you have never really been intimately involved in wrestling and you like it, you kind of watch it, you hear Jason's story, and you're like, man, that's something that I want to try. This Sunday in Andover, Massachusetts, Chaotic Wrestling is doing one of their Chaotic Wrestling fantasy camps. I believe it is $80. It is one day. You get to go in, you get to get pushed around a little bit, take some bumps, see a glimpse of what it's like to be like Jason and like all these other amazing athletes that, you know, put their livelihood on the livelihood on the line for you every time they get in the ring. Go check that out. And I'm pimping it not because they asked me to, but because I'm going. Like, I'm going to be there. I'm doing the fantasy camp. I'm going to see what it's like to be on the other side of the ropes. So I'm going to go in there, take some bumps. I see a look of interest on your face.
So what I'm hearing is within the next couple of years, we could have a Nate versus Jason match.
I mean, I don't
It's
know if
possible,
I'd go
right?
that far. We can
No.
we can chat the details about that post show a little bit, but that will be like another long conversation. But yeah, I'll be there. So tune in next week, episode 2. Again, the Monarchy, BMT, and Powerhouse Ariel, the King and Queen of New England, and you get to hear me complain about how much my back hurts. But Jason, thank you again for being the inaugural guest and kind of going through the bumps of getting all this going. It's been a pleasure to have you on. And thank you to everybody who showed up live. You guys are awesome. I have debuted
Except for Joey Nail.
Except for
Thank
Joey
you to everybody
Nails.
but Joey Nail.
Okay, there's your shout out, Joey Nails. I have debuted several podcasts in my 13-year podcasting career. And I'm not kidding when I say this is the most successful live episode 1. You guys are awesome. You were super active in the chat. Thank you guys so much. Greatly appreciated. But that's not to take anything away from the podcast listeners. If you're listening on audio, I know people have lives. Not everyone has the same schedule. Thank you guys as well. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for following. Again, comment, review, rate, all that fun thing. I'm not going to repeat myself. Jason, thanks, bud. I will catch you again soon. You yourself have a great night. For Jason, for myself, have a good night.
Have a good night.
All right. I realized